respect my boundary for me to feel like I'm respected. No, I can just remove myself from the situation, and that shows that I respect my boundary enough to go ahead and remove myself. I don't need your permission. We don't need to move on your time. I'm going to do what's best for me. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Hood Soft Life podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina, and in this podcast, we talk about navigating the challenges that come with growing up in the hood and leaving those challenges behind for a soft life. Growing up in the hood comes with its own set of challenges. But what people don't tend to tell you is not only do those challenges follow you once you've made it out physically, but they tend to intensify. So I'm bringing you along on my journey. I'm going to be honest with you about the struggles and the lessons that I'm learning to achieve a soft life. In this episode, we're going to be talking about setting boundaries. They can be challenging, they can be difficult, but they are extremely important. So let's get started. First and foremost, this episode releases, God willing, on Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, depending on when you watch this. Happy all the holidays that are around this time, because there are so many. I hope that you guys are having a great holiday. You guys are spending it with loved ones, family, friends, whatever that looks like for you. And I hope that you're just having a great time. You're able to relax. A lot of people have this season off for work, so I hope that you are taking care of yourself in the process of all this time. If you lost a loved one, I just want to take a quick moment to address that. If you lost a loved one, whether that was recently or not, during the holidays or not, I hope you know that that loved one is still very much with you. They still care about you very much, and they are watching over you throughout this difficult time. And even if you feel like you're in pain and it feels unbearable, think about all the good times that you had with them, commemorate them, celebrate them, focus on the positive of their life and what they brought to you and the love that they brought to you. And I'm just going to pray for you, because this got to be challenging to go through a holiday without a loved one, whether it's the first one or it's the fifth one. No amount of time really ever eases that pain or gets rid of that pain. So I just want to give you some extra attention. And if you are somebody who has a strained relationship with family, I definitely want to give you some extra attention as well. The holidays can be very lonely and very difficult. If you are somebody who has a strained relationship and chose to celebrate the holidays alone this year, I hope that celebrating the holidays alone did you everything that you needed. You got to spend some time by yourself, take care of yourself. Everybody has things to do around the house, so maybe you did some things around the house, but if you haven't found your tribe yet, you haven't found your people yet, just know that they are on the way, they are coming. And I also just want to say that I'm very proud of you for establishing the boundary of saying, I'm not going to go back into a tumultuous situation and I'm going to decide to spend the time by myself. So I'm very proud of you for setting that boundary and for putting yourself first. And even though it may be challenging, even though it may feel very lonely, just know that you made the right choice by standing by yourself, and that at the end of the day, the right people are going to come if they haven't already. So let's get into it. This is the last episode of 2024 and we are getting ready for 2025, and I'm super excited. And with that, I want 2025 to be the best year it can possibly be for all of us. And the first thing that we can do to make sure that that happens is by setting boundaries. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about what boundaries are and why they are important. According to my girl Google, boundaries are guidelines that we create to protect our peace, energy, and our values. The way I like to think about boundaries is essentially, what am I going to do if somebody disrespects the line that I've set, the threshold that I've established for myself? So let me give you an example, right? If I'm somebody who doesn't like gossip, I don't like being around gossip, I don't like people who gossip, whatever, and I have a friend who, we're out to lunch and they're gossiping about other people, immediately I'm going to say, hey, can you please stop talking about other people? I don't like when people gossip about others. That is my boundary. In addition to what your boundary is, you need to also establish what the consequences are in case somebody disrespects your boundary. Let's keep going with this one. If I already established the boundary of like, hey, I don't like gossip, can we please stop talking about other people in a disrespectful manner? Boom, there goes the boundary. My friend has two options: respect my boundary or disrespect my boundary. If they respect my boundary, then we're all good. We don't have to reestablish the boundary because they've already understood what I said and they respect me in our relationship enough not to cross the line again. If this person continues to cross the line, essentially what I can do is I can either verbalize the consequence of like, hey, I already told you that my boundary is gossip. I don't like gossip. I don't like people talking about other people in a disrespectful manner. Please stop. If you do not stop, then I'm going to have to go ahead and limit my communication with you because I don't want to be around that type of negative energy. That's the consequence. Make sure that you have a consequence in mind for when somebody crosses your boundary. Now, we all hope that people will just respect and appreciate our boundaries and follow through with them, but they don't always. And so when they don't, if that is the case, you need to be ready to step on what the next step is, what you're going to do next in case they disrespect it, because you want to establish your sense of self-worth, and you also want to establish with the other person that I'm serious about this boundary. If you're not serious, then there needs to be a consequence for you. Now, you can either verbalize your consequence, or some people just follow through without telling anybody because you've already established what the boundary is and the fact that they're not respecting it. Some people will just start limiting their communication. They'll just be like, hey, I've already told you a few times that I don't like gossip. I don't like being around people who talk about others in a negative manner. So you naturally just start to fall back. And that person may or may not question it. They might be like, hey, like, why don't you talk to me as much? You can bring it up and just say, I established my boundary and I said that I'm not into talking about other people in a negative manner, and yet you continue to do that. So I had to do what was best for me and take a step back. If they ask, definitely feel free to share your boundaries with them. If they don't ask, then hey, it seems like they got the message and that's not the friendship for you. Why boundaries are important is for a couple of reasons, and they all fall under this umbrella of personal growth. But essentially the first one is establishing your self-worth. When you establish boundaries, you establish what you are and are not willing to tolerate in any kind of relationships, whether that's family, romantic relationships, friends, co-worker, even boss-employee relationships, because you can definitely establish boundaries there too. We're taught that we can't establish any boundaries at work. You absolutely can. One, you're establishing what you're worth and what you are willing to tolerate and what your level of respect is for other people to understand. Of like, okay, she doesn't tolerate when people call her out of her name, so I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to respect her and ensure that I don't call her out of her name. That would be an example. The second reason that boundaries are super important is because they protect your peace and your time and your energy from situations that you do not need in your life. So for example, let's continue to go with that gossip example. If I'm around people who like to gossip and I establish the boundary of like, hey, I don't like when people talk about others in a negative manner, can you please stop? That protects me from any future situations where people continue to gossip around me. Now, if somebody continues to do that after I've already established the boundary, my consequence also protects me from having that negative energy around me, because I've established that if people are going to continue to do this, if they're going to continue to gossip around me, I know that I'm going to remove myself from that situation to protect my peace, to protect my energy, and most importantly, to protect my time. Time is something that you can never, ever, ever get back. And you don't want to waste time telling people over and over again, how many times do I have to tell you? I do not like when you gossip about others. Don't even bother wasting your time. If you've established a boundary, it's one thing for people to forget. Maybe you have to reestablish it one time, but it's another thing when people are doing it over and over and over again, despite being told what your boundaries are. Just go ahead and protect your energy, protect your peace, protect your time, and just go ahead and follow through with the consequence. And that's why I love boundaries so much, is because I honestly hate wasting time. I cannot stand having my time wasted. And so the last thing I want to do is sit there repeating myself over and over again of like, hey, why won't you follow my boundaries? Why won't you respect what I said? Why won't you respect the fact that I don't like gossip, that I don't like being around people who talk about others negatively? I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to just do myself the favor and remove myself from the situation. And again, not only does that establish me protecting my energy, peace, and time, but it also establishes my self-worth. I know that I am worthy enough to remove myself from an unwanted situation if somebody continues to cross my line. I don't need to wait for them to respect my boundary for me to feel like I'm respected. No, I can just remove myself from the situation, and that shows that I respect my boundary enough to go ahead and remove myself. I don't need your permission. We don't need to move on your time. I'm going to do what's best for me. The third reason why boundaries are important is because they help you establish healthy relationships. When you establish what boundaries you are willing to have and what you're not going to tolerate, they help you weed out the people that don't respect you at all. So for example, if I say I don't like to drink, which is very true, I don't like drinking, and I have somebody that is constantly pushing me to drink, they're constantly trying to peer pressure me, they're buying me drinks, and they're trying to force me into something that I said I'm not interested in. If I have somebody, a quote unquote friend, that is doing that, they don't respect my boundary of I don't drink. You can do whatever you want. That's fine, but I don't drink. They don't respect my boundary if they're buying me drinks, if they're trying to push me into doing it. Well, why not? You don't have any fun. All that extra. They don't respect my boundary. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish a boundary and say, hey, I said that I don't drink. If you continue to push me to drink, I'm going to go ahead and fall back because clearly you don't respect me. And what boundaries can do for you in terms of building healthy relationships is they show you who respects you and who doesn't. And they also will show you who you need to eliminate from your life immediately. If I tell somebody that I don't like to drink and the first thing they do is buy me a shot and try to peer pressure me into taking it, I know that I immediately need to remove that person from my life because they don't respect me. They're trying to convince me to do things their way instead of my way, and they're trying to see if I'm going to fold. And if I'll fold on this, what else am I going to fold on? What else can they push me into doing? And I don't want those types of relationships. I want the types of relationships where people are going to respect what I said the first time. I say, hey, I don't drink. They're going to be like, okay, cool. If you don't want alcohol, what else do you want to drink so that I can go and get it for you so I can respect your boundary? Those are the types of relationships I'm looking for. And I'm so, so grateful for my friends because they respect my boundaries. Every once in a while, I get the question of why you don't drink because it's so normal in our society. And that's fine. I'm willing to answer the question. But once I answer the question, everybody respects my boundary. They're just curious, and that's fine. I'm happy to answer. There's a difference between curiosity and somebody questioning your boundaries because they want to see how they're going to manipulate it. And you need to be able to identify that. So when I tell somebody that, hey, I don't drink, and they say, oh, well, why don't you drink? And I just say, well, I grew up around people who struggle with alcoholism. Immediately they understand and they respect my boundary. That's it. But if somebody says, hey, why don't you drink? And you say, oh, well, I grew up around people who struggle with alcoholism. Well, what does that have to do with you? If you knew what it was like to be around alcoholics, like just do what you need to do so that you're not an alcoholic. Or maybe it's just one drink. It's not that big a deal. If people start doing that, that's completely different. They're trying to wiggle you out of your boundaries and they're trying to see if you're going to fold, and they're going to see what else you're willing to fold on. Stand firm on what your boundaries are. Stand 10 toes, stand on business, and just say, I'm all set. That's not something that I do. Period, point blank. All right. Just as much as we love to set boundaries with other people, it is very important that you set boundaries with yourself. Yes, it is possible to set boundaries with yourself. You need to do it. It's not just going to be other people that cross the line with you. You will cross the line on yourself. And that is probably worse than having other people cross your line because you know what your boundary is and you still cross the line anyway. And it could be something simple of like, I said I'm not going to check my emails after 5 o'clock and here I am checking my work emails after 7 o'clock. I'm not respecting my boundaries. I'm crossing my own line and I'm showing myself that I'm not worth the rest and the recharge to stop looking at my email after 5 p.m. Or maybe it's something big. I said that I'm no longer going to date people who pressure me into doing something that I don't want to do. And yet here I am in a relationship where somebody is pressuring me to do something that I don't want to do. That shows what type of self-worth I have towards myself because I'm allowing myself to be in situations that are not beneficial for me. I'm not sticking to my boundaries. So it's important to have boundaries because same thing, they'll help you establish what your self-worth is. It'll help you foster a healthy relationship with yourself. The biggest thing about having boundaries with yourself is that you hold yourself accountable to the standards that you set for yourself and for the goals that you have for yourself. So if you have a goal to go to the gym 3 to 5 times a week and you actually go, you actually keep that boundary, you're holding yourself accountable. But if you have a goal to go to the gym 3 to 5 times a week and you only go once a week and there's no reason why you shouldn't be going, you don't have any health issues, there's not anything major going on in your life, you're just not going, you're not holding yourself accountable, you're not holding yourself to your boundaries, and you're essentially telling yourself that you're not worth the commitment to the gym. You're not worth fulfilling your goal. You're not worth the time that you're trying to put into this goal. Why is setting boundaries with yourself important? First thing is that it establishes self-trust. As much as we like to believe that we trust ourselves with our decisions, that we trust ourselves with our ability to follow through on our goals, it's not until you see yourself in action that you can establish whether or not you can truly trust yourself or not. So for example, if I say I want to gain 50% muscle mass, whatever, just a random number. If I want to gain 50% muscle mass compared to whatever percentage I have right now, and I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week so that I can get to 50% muscle mass, that's my goal, right? But if I say I'm not going to go to the gym today, I don't feel like going today, I'm not going to go to the gym tomorrow because I don't feel like going tomorrow, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this weekend because I just don't feel like it. You're going to tell yourself that you don't trust yourself enough to follow through and meet your goal. You don't trust yourself enough to get to where you want to be. Also, you're showing yourself that you can't show up for yourself as much as you thought that you could. If you have a dream to make music and so you're going to commit 2 hours a day to writing music, producing music, whatever the case may be, if that's your goal is to make music and to produce music, and you've already set the action step, I'm going to commit 2 hours a day to this, and then you don't follow through, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust yourself that you'll be able to accomplish the goal. You don't trust yourself to be able to establish the types of dreams that you have for yourself. You don't believe that you can do it, and so you're just going to go ahead and let yourself fall off the wayside. If you counted on somebody else, like let's say for example somebody says they're going to pick you up and bring you to the airport at 6 a.m. and they don't show up, you don't trust them anymore because they did not follow through with what they said they were going to do for you. You need to apply that with yourself. You don't trust yourself anymore with the thing that you said that you were going to do, and so you need to be able to establish that self-trust. When you follow through with your boundaries, when you set those boundaries and you stay firm to them, you start to establish trust. I told myself I was going to be going to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, every week, except for the week of my cycle, because I just cannot do it. And so I've been doing that, and I've been feeling so much better and so much more confident. And even on the days where I don't feel like going, I still show up because I told myself, I want to do this. I want to be committed to the goals that I've set for myself. I want to go into this next year being more disciplined and being able to trust myself more, because as much as I'm a good person and I'm a smart person, I don't trust myself because I keep falling off every time because I don't believe that I can achieve my goals. But this upcoming year and as I move forward in life, I want to trust myself more with the things that I've set for myself. If I say I'm going to the gym 3 to 5 days a week, I'm going to the gym 3 to 5 days a week, unless there is a very valid reason as to why I'm not going. And just because you don't feel like it is not a valid enough reason for why you're not going. When you honor the commitments that you set for yourself, you feel like you are on top of the world. It's like you just walked out with the freshest blowout, the freshest braids, the freshest cut of your life. You're feeling good. You feel like nothing can touch you because you followed through on the thing that you said that you were going to follow through on, especially when it is so challenging. Like I use that gym example a lot because it is so true. When you go on the day where it is the hardest and you still followed through, you still showed up, even if it wasn't perfect, you still showed up. You feel so good about yourself, and you're establishing that sense of self-worth, you're establishing that sense of self-trust, and you're showing yourself that you can be committed to the thing even and especially when it is difficult. And I want that for you. I want you to establish those boundaries so you can feel that way, so you can feel that sense of happiness and joy and just that sense of pride. And I did that thing for myself and I'm proud of myself. Same thing with having boundaries with other people. When you have boundaries with yourself, you're protecting your energy and you're protecting your peace. If I say that my boundary is that I'm not going to be checking my work emails after 5 p.m. at 4:55, I'm logging off my email and I'm not checking it for the rest of the day because I'm going to go ahead and protect my peace and protect my energy, because I don't need to be doing anything for work outside of work hours that I'm not getting paid for, number one. And number two, that lets me know that I am worth the rest and the recharge from 5 p.m. for the rest of the night. I am worth the time of being able to do whatever it is that I want to do, whether it's go to the gym, whether it's hang out with friends, whether it's spend time with family, whether it is laying in my bed and watching a little bit of TV and enjoying some brain rot. I'm worth that. I am worth the time that I'm setting aside for myself. And that's the thing. We have a very hard time with setting time aside for ourselves because we keep believing that we have to always give our time to somebody else. And you don't. It is just as important for you to give time to yourself as it is to give time to other relationships. Your relationship with yourself is going to be the most important relationship that you can foster, because at the end of the day, especially if you're single, you go home to yourself. That's it. You go home to yourself, you spend the most time with yourself, you spend the most time in your own brain more than anybody else's. And so it's important that you spend the most time that you can prioritizing yourself and putting yourself first. Ooh, this one's my favorite. Last thing is that it helps with personal growth. When you establish boundaries and when you follow through with them, okay, I'm gonna eat healthy 4 out of 7 days a week, because everybody starts off small. Okay, give everybody some grace. I'm gonna eat healthy 4 out of 7 days a week, and you plan out your meal preps and you have everything all set and you're good to go. When you set that boundary and you start to develop discipline, because now it's become a pattern of, I'm going to do this 4 out of the 7 days of the week. I'm going to make sure that I eat healthy, and I'm going to keep doing this week after week after week. And next thing you know, you've established discipline, even on the days where all you want is some soul food, you want some yams and fried chicken, a little bit of mac and cheese. I said I was going to eat healthy for out of the 7 days out of the week, and I've already had my 3 days of the week where I eat whatever I want to, so I cannot have this week. Maybe I can save it for next week. You start to establish a sense of discipline, and you start to create this pattern for yourself of like, even though I want this so bad, even though I want to check that email so bad, even though I want to go out so bad, I'm going to follow through with the boundary that I set for myself. And that is so important, because at the end of the day, there's a difference between discipline and motivation, right? Motivation is great. Motivation is cool. She is my girl. But that is just a feeling. And motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes in waves. You cannot count on that. What you need to count on is discipline. You need to count on the patterns and the boundaries that you set for yourself and that you reinforce day after day, even when you do not feel like it, because motivation is fleeting. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline is what's going to stay. Discipline is going to be one of the key things, a little bit of that secret sauce that's going to help you achieve your dream life at the end of the day. And so when you establish those boundaries, you are pushing yourself to establish a sense of discipline. And that is very, very important if you want to achieve the life that you want for yourself. All right, let's talk about how you can set boundaries with yourself. So I have a list here. The first thing is establish the areas in life that need boundaries. Where are you overextending, or maybe you're not prioritizing enough? So if you feel like you are spending way too much time on social media, maybe you're not eating the right foods, maybe you're spending too much time helping others, whatever the case may be, if you're overextending in those areas, how can you pull back? Or maybe you're not prioritizing self-care, you're not prioritizing your dream of creating content or making music or looking into that school, that program that you want to get into, whatever it is. If you're not prioritizing those things, what can you do? What boundaries can you set to ensure that you're putting that at the forefront, that you're making that a priority? So for example, maybe you're somebody who wants to eat healthier, but you keep finding that you're always leaning towards unhealthy foods. Establish what the area that you want to set boundaries is first. Now you're going to go ahead and set your clear, specific limits. So I am not going to allow myself to eat unhealthy for 2 days out of the week. That's the limit for myself. I've already established that I eat too many unhealthy foods, and my goal is that I want to eat better. So now I'm going to go ahead and set the clear limit for myself. I'm not going to allow myself to eat unhealthy foods 2 out of the 7 days out of the week. Next thing is going to be to create a system of accountability, whether that is setting reminders on your phone of you're only allowed 2 days out of the week where you can eat unhealthy. Maybe you have an accountability partner where you do meal preps with them. Maybe you have like a meal prep menu that you created for yourself. You have a planner where you figure the things out. Which days of the week am I going to eat out? Which days of the week am I going to eat at home? What am I going to make for this week? Whatever the case may be, however you can establish that sense of accountability, find a way to do it, because it's extremely important that you do. And the last thing is make sure that you practice self-compassion. Backsliding is very normal. Backsliding is going to happen. You need to learn how to practice self-compassion and just saying, okay, I know I said that I was only going to eat unhealthy 2 out of 7 days a week, and this is the 3rd day where I'm just eating whatever I feel like eating. Even though I didn't follow through on my boundary today, I'm going to make sure that tomorrow's a better day and that I get myself back on track. That is probably the hardest thing about setting boundaries with yourself. We are our toughest critic. We are so hard on ourselves. And so when we backslide, when we fall off the wayside, when we do the things that we're not supposed to be doing, we tend to just be like, whatever. And we're just like all or nothing. And we'll be like, whatever, I messed up and I ate unhealthy 4 out of 7 days out of this week and it's over for me. Forget it. I'll just start over next year, whatever the case may be. No. You don't have to do that. You don't have to talk badly about yourself. You don't have to disrespect yourself. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Well, all you can do really is just acknowledge the fact that, hey, it happened. I made the mistake, but I'm worth trying again tomorrow. I'm worth getting back on track tomorrow. I don't have to just throw my hands up and say it is what it is and I messed up. No, you could just say, I made the mistake and I'm holding myself accountable and I'm going to go ahead and try again tomorrow, make tomorrow a better day. And even do the same thing with self-care. If you find that you are struggling with taking care of yourself, putting yourself first, your time with yourself first, just go ahead and do the same thing of like, okay, I know I said I'm going to stop checking my email after 5 p.m. and it's 7 p.m. on a Friday night, but I know I made this mistake and that I shouldn't have done it. The time is already gone, but moving forward on Monday, we're going to try again. We're going to make sure that I'm not checking my email after 5 p.m. and we're going to continue to do that. It is okay to reset. It's okay to start over. It is okay to just do a quick little refresh if you fall off. Everybody falls off. That is so normal. The thing that you can do is just start over again. If you just fall off and just say, well, might as well just stay here, like you're never going to get anywhere. You're never going to get closer to the goal that you want to achieve. So just get back up. It's okay. Same thing with setting boundaries. If you feel like you let a boundary slide one time and somebody disrespects that boundary again, that's a new opportunity for you to say, hey, I let that slide one time and that's on me for not saying anything, but I want to make sure that I say something this time. And so please don't, whatever the case may be. The other thing about establishing boundaries is that it helps us have a better mental health, because when we establish boundaries, not only do we start to boost our sense of self-worth, we start to protect our energy and our peace, but we also start to reduce levels of stress, burnout, and resentment. When we have people who are constantly crossing our boundaries and we're not saying anything, we're going to start to resent those people. We're going to start to resent ourselves, and we find that we're not following through on our own boundaries. But if we establish our boundaries and we follow through on them, we're able to reduce our level of stress, our level of resentment, and our level of burnout to keep ourselves at a full cup at all costs. In addition to that, when we start to set these boundaries, like I mentioned earlier, you start to have healthier relationships because you start to figure out who is going to respect you and who is not, and you're going to go ahead and cut out the people who don't respect you, right? And you start to establish a better self-esteem because you're going to commit to the boundary that you've set. You're going to go ahead and say, like, this is what I'm worth. This is the type of respect that I'm tolerating. This is the type of disrespect that I'm not tolerating. And you follow through with it. And so you start to realize, hey, I'm respecting myself a lot more. I'm not tolerating this, that, and the third. I'm not allowing myself to disrespect myself in these manners. And you start to feel better, and your mental health just starts to alleviate a little bit more because you're not allowing so much negativity around you. You're not allowing so many things to slide. You're not allowing so many disrespectful energies in your area. You don't have to allow that. So when you set those boundaries for yourself, you're establishing a better sense of mental health as well, because all the positivity around you will start to elevate because you're eliminating all the negative things. That's what your boundaries are for. They're there to help you eliminate the negative things that you do not want in your life. Every successful person has boundaries. Every successful person has an idea of what they are willing to tolerate, what they're not willing to tolerate, and they have an idea of here's how much time that I'm going to allow working on whatever it is they work on, whether it's a business, whether it's content creation, whether it's music, whatever the case may be. Here's how much time I'm willing to spend on this. And here's how much time that I'm going to dedicate to myself, to my family, to my friends, to my loved ones, whatever, to just living my life. And that's what makes them successful, is that they have a balance. They have an idea established in their head of what works for them. It works for me to be able to work 25 hours a week towards my goals. And then for the rest of the time, I am spending time with my family. I am spending time with my loved ones. I am traveling. I am doing all these things. They keep that balance, and that's what keeps them successful. If you spend too much time focusing on just your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations, you are going to run on E. Your cup is going to be empty. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You're going to start to resent the thing that you're working on. You're going to start getting frustrated, and the quality of your work is going to deplete. Your mental health is also going to deplete because you feel like you're just constantly going and going and going. But if you have a balance, and if you establish boundaries to keep that balance, you will find that you can have a harmonious life, you can live in peace, and you can have both things. You can have the life where you travel and you spend time with family and you do the things that you want to do, and you're growing in your business, you're growing in whatever it is that you're shooting your shot for. You're growing in both of those things. Why is it hard to set boundaries? I have a couple of reasons. The first thing is fear of rejection or guilt. When you set boundaries with other people especially, they will, oftentimes, not always, try to guilt trip you out of setting that boundary, especially if it's something new for them. They're just going to find a way to be like, well, why did you establish that? Or like, why is that the case now? I was never the case before. I guarantee you there's going to be somebody that'll be like, why? You used to be fine with that before. Well, I'm not fine with that anymore. And so that's probably one of the reasons why it's so difficult, is because you're just worried about what other people are going to say, and you're worried about making people feel bad. Maybe you're a people pleaser. That's one thing. And when you're setting boundaries with yourself, it can be hard because of the fear of just rejection or failure, the fear of things going wrong. That could be another reason why you don't want to set boundaries. Next thing, cultural and societal pressures, feeling obligated to help your family first. So, especially if you're looking like me, right? Boundaries may not be something that your family appreciates or fully understands. And it's a passed on thing, so we're just going to give grace for that and Recognize that and move on. It might be difficult for you to set boundaries because growing up, like, that's just not something that you were taught. You weren't taught to set boundaries, especially in this American society. We're taught not to ruffle any feathers and not to make people mad and just do what people say. Just be a yes person. And no, don't be a yes person. Do whatever is going to make you feel comfortable, whatever is going to make you feel happy, whatever is going to keep your energy full. Do that, and just that alone. That can be challenging when you come from a culture, when you come from a family that doesn't respect boundaries, that never has established boundaries before, and you may be the first person to do so. Sometimes people pleasing feels safer or easier than confrontation. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, if you're telling yourself that people pleasing or just not ruffling any feathers or let me not make anybody mad is easier than confrontation, I'm going to tell you that it's not. Because at the end of the day, you're going to start to get annoyed with a situation, and you're going to start to get frustrated with the fact that you're not saying anything or that situation continues, but it's because you allow it. If you had set boundaries for it, or if you start to set boundaries for it, you will find that will diminish, whether it's because they stopped or whether it's because you removed yourself from that situation. But either way, if you're telling yourself that it's just better for me to just let it go, it's fine, whatever, I promise you there's going to be a day comes where you blow your top off, because now you're just frustrated because all that pent up frustration has just been building up inside of you for who knows how long. And at some point you're just going to blow up. It's just, I'm telling you, it's just easier to set the boundary. Let it be a one-time thing. A one-time fee for a lifetime of peace. Let's talk about how to set boundaries as a whole, whether they're for yourself or for others. The first thing is going to be to know your values. Reflect on what's most important to you, whether that's your health, time with your family, your finances, self-care, the way people talk to you, the way people treat you. Establish your values. Next thing is going to be to communicate them clearly. So maybe you're going to say, I cannot help you with this because I need to focus on whatever. I cannot help you with moving this weekend because I need to focus on my homework. I need to focus on this project. I need to focus on my job. That's a good way for you to establish your boundary and communicate it clearly. Or if you do this, then I'll do Y situation. Hey, my boundary is I don't like when people talk badly about other people. If you continue to do it, then I will cut my communication with you. There you go. And some people might think that that's harsh, and some people might be like, oh, you're so cutthroat. No, it's just like, I'm letting you know up front. Why do we have to beat around the bush for that? Because then that leaves room for confusion, or that leaves room for opportunity for people to, try to slither their way through and find another way to disrespect your boundary. No, just be as direct as possible and just say, like, I'm not being rude. I'm just being as direct as possible because I don't want there to be any confusion, and I don't want there to be a situation where, because I wasn't direct, you still cross a boundary and now I'm frustrated. I'd rather it be, if I'm clear and I'm direct about what my communication is with you and what my boundary is with you, I know that you got it. And if you continue to do it, that's on you. But if I wasn't clear about my communication, then that's on me. So just save yourself the trouble and be as direct as possible. Even if somebody's like, that was rude, it's not rude. It's just direct to save everybody some trouble. Next thing, anticipate pushback. There are going to be people who are going to be resistant to your boundaries. They're going to have questions. They're going to push back. Just continue to establish your boundaries. Anticipate that. Just go ahead and anticipate that. Don't even be surprised when somebody pushes back. Just be ready for it. Just be like, I know that this is new for you, or I know that this is uncomfortable for you. I know you're not used to boundaries, but this is important for me. It is important for me that I stay around people who do not gossip because I want my energy to be positive. So I know that this is new for you and you're used to gossiping around other people. I'm just letting you know that this is for me, and this is for my mental health and my sanity and my peace. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then the last thing is stay firm. Stand 10 toes on business. Stand 10 toes on what you said. So if you said that you were going to cut off somebody because they disrespected you and they called you out your name, you better cut them off when they disrespect you and call you out your name, if that's the case. Because if you don't do that, if you don't stand firm on what the consequence is, then they're going to just feel like, oh, well, you said that you were going to cut me off and you didn't, so I'm going to continue to do it anyways. And I'm going to go ahead a step further and start doing this, that, and a third to you as well, because clearly you don't care enough. You say you have those quote unquote boundaries, but you never stayed firm on them. So clearly they don't mean anything to you. There's just talk. If you say you're going to do something, you better do it. You better follow through on it. If you say that you're going to cut somebody off because they disrespected you and they called you something disrespectful, I'm trying not to curse anymore, and that's the case, cut them off. Cut them off. That's it. There's no need to explain either. There's no reason to backslide on that. They already knew what your boundary was and they chose to violate it, to disrespect it. Follow through. That's it. When it comes to setting boundaries, I don't want you to be like me. And when I say that, what I mean is essentially when I first started figuring out what boundaries were and, what that all means, I was a little bit older. I was probably like in high school, somewhere around that age range. And at that point, my boundaries had already been crossed and violated so many times. But because I had never articulated them and I never fully understood what it means to set boundaries, and also because I grew up in a family that doesn't believe in boundaries, for lack of a better word, I was very, very harsh and cutthroat with my boundaries once I've figured that out. And once I've realized like this makes me so angry that I don't say anything about it. And I don't want you to be like me, right? If you feel like there is something that somebody does that constantly frustrates you and it makes you upset, that's a boundary. There's no thought about it. Like, you already know that's something that you don't like. That's something that you don't want to tolerate. And just be honest with it. Just say, hey, I don't like when you make comments about my weight. Can you please stop doing that? That is your boundary. Now, if you need more time to figure out what your consequence is going to be, because maybe you can't cut somebody off because that's your mom and you live at home with them, just figure out what your consequence is going to be. That's fine. But you established and communicated what your boundary is. I did not do that when I figured out what boundaries were. I was kind of just like, well, why do you always do that? And you just don't respect me and whatever. And it was just back and forth. It wasn't clearly communicated. It wasn't established. It was none of those things. And I don't want you to do that because that can mess up your relationships, because sometimes people are crossing boundaries they didn't even know exist. And it's not until you set the boundary that they can go ahead and oblige and follow through with what that boundary you set is. But if they have no idea that you're sensitive to conversations about your weight, they're going to keep talking about it. But if they respect you and love you enough, and you say, hey, I do not like when you make comments about my weight, they're going to stop. And so I did not do that. And it just turned into a lot of arguing and a lot of yelling of you just don't respect. And they're like, well, what do you mean I don't respect you? What are you talking about? And it's like I couldn't articulate it because I didn't understand fully what boundaries were and how to set them and all that extra stuff. And I come from a family that doesn't really have any boundaries. And so how can I explain boundaries to people who don't understand it when I don't understand it? So if you are coming from a family that doesn't really believe in boundaries, they don't understand them, and you find that you don't understand boundaries either, but you have an idea of what you do and do not like, what you will and will not tolerate, I highly encourage you to start practicing setting boundaries and start figuring out what it is that you will and will not tolerate. Some things you just already know off the bat. If somebody makes a comment about people of your race and you don't like that, and automatically it's just like, you know that's a boundary for you and you don't need to think about it. But if it's something like with a relationship, for example, and it's something that you're new to, maybe this is your first relationship and you don't like when they hold your hand in public. Let's just use that example. And it's not until they hold your hand in public for the first time that you realize that you don't like it. That's different. You might need to take some time to think about that. Or it could be a conversation about religion or whatever the case may be. There's some things that are just obvious, like as soon as it's done, you know that you don't like it. And there's some things where it's just like, I thought that was okay, but I actually don't vibe with that. I don't like that at all. And that's fine. And if somebody says, well, you used to let that happen before, why don't you let it happen now? Because it took me some time to be able to figure out what I do and don't like, and that's okay. And people grow and people evolve and people change, and there's things that people tolerated yesterday that they don't tolerate today. It's just that simple. So don't be like me. Long story short, don't just start yelling at people because they're disrespectful and they don't value your boundaries if you've never communicated them before and if you've never had a conversation about what boundaries are. If you grow up in a family that doesn't understand what boundaries are, play this episode for them so that they can start to have an idea of what boundaries are and why they're important and why it'll help your relationship, whether that's with your family, with your coworker, with your boss, with your partner, with your friend, whatever. All right, y'all, I love me a little shadow work prompt. So I have I have 3 for you today that I want you to think about in terms of boundaries. And so the first one is, think of an area in your life where you constantly break promises to yourself, whether that has to do with your health, your time management, your emotional well-being, etc. Why do you struggle with honoring these commitments? You're going to find that the answer to these are very deep. They're very personal, and it'll surprise you. Even if you're not ready to say it out loud, and that's what I love about shadow work. The answer will come up in your head immediately. Next one. How do your current boundaries, or lack thereof, reflect how you see yourself and your role in your relationships? And the last one. Are there boundaries that you set because of external expectations rather than true desires? So what that means essentially is like, are you setting these boundaries because they're trendy, they're cool, people on social media are doing them all the time? Or are you setting these boundaries because these are things that you truly desire? They're things that you truly value. They're things that you're truly not going to tolerate. Like, what's thesis? All right. We are at the point where we've reached our affirmation for this week. And our affirmation for this week is, boundaries are a form of love. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that 3 times. If you want to close your eyes, close your eyes. If you want to write this down, however you want to speak this positivity onto your life, find a way to do it. And so, boundaries are a form of love. Boundaries are a form of love. Boundaries are a form of love. All right, that is all I have for you this week. Let me know what your thoughts are on this episode about boundaries. I'm not going to lie, it was very challenging filming this, not because I have a difficulty with setting boundaries. If anything, I set boundaries a little too much now, but mostly because it was kind of hard to communicate that, because I feel like boundaries are so personal. But let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. Are there any boundaries that you are struggling to set? If you feel comfortable enough to share them, you can share them in the comments on YouTube, you can share them on Instagram, you can share them on TikTok, you can even email me. My email is in the description. Whether you're listening to this on an audio platform or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find my email in the description. But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. What are some boundaries that you stand 10 toes on every single time? And was there anything new that you learned about boundaries this week? That was the last episode of 2024, and I am super excited to see what 2025 has to bring for us. So until then, I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Bye.